You stand in the shadow of the Pharos, that towering beacon of white marble slicing the Mediterranean haze. Salt stings your nostrils first, sharp as a whip's crack, mingling with the faint rot of fish guts from the harbors below. Then comes the clamor merchants hawking spices in a babel of Greek and Coptic, their voices rising like a tide over the slap of waves against stone quays. Laughter bubbles up from a knot of young men clustered near the temple steps, their tunics stained with ink and sweat, scrolls tucked under arms as they trade barbs about some far-off Roman fool. The air hums with it, alive, defiant. Alexandria pulses like a heart, too vast to tame, its streets a labyrinth of secrets older than the empire itself. But watch the horizon. A sail swells there, crimson against the blue, cresting the waves like a bloodied blade. Drums echo first, low and relentless. Then the creak of oars, the snort of horses aboard. The fleet arrives unannounced, disgorging an emperor who dreams of gods and ghosts. He steps ashore not as guest, but as storm. And in that moment, as the young men turn, grinning at the spectacle, you feel it the shift. The air thickens. The laughter dies. What begins as a whisper of mockery will end in rivers red. This tale isn't mere cruelty. This was a machine grinding against its own gears. In the year 215, under a sky heavy with the scent of Nile silt, Emperor Caracalla unleashed hell on Alexandria, not from blind rage alone, but from the cold calculus of an empire fraying at its edges. He came to honor a conqueror from centuries past, yet left a city scarred, its youth slaughtered in a ploy as calculated as it was savage. This wasn't madness unchecked. This was power's anatomy laid bare, paranoia forged in fratricide, ambition masked as piety, and an autocrat who turned a jest into justification for erasure. Why did one man's wounded pride doom thousands? And what shadows of that machine linger in our own halls of authority? As we walk these bloodied streets together, the answer unfolds not in screams, but in the quiet machinery that made them possible. The Roman Empire in 215 stretched like a colossus weary of its own weight. From the misty moors of Britannia to the sun-baked sands of Mesopotamia, it was an age of iron and ink, where legions marched not just for glory, but to prop up a treasury bled dry by endless wars. Septimius Severus, the soldier emperor from North Africa's sun-scorched hills, had clawed the throne from chaos in 193, his rise a testament to the army's sway over senate and gods alike. He ruled with a fist wrapped in coin, doubling soldiers' pay, fortifying frontiers, and binding provinces through fear and favor. But his legacy was his sons, two wolves raised in the den of power, gnawing at the same bone. Caracalla-born Lucius Septimius Bassianus in 188 rechristened Marcus Aurelius Antoninus to cloak his family in Antonine prestige, grew amid the clash of steel and the whisper of plots. His father dragged him across battlefields from the Rhine's chill fogs to Parthia's dusty plains, schooling him in the emperor's creed: command the blade, or it commands you. By 9, Caracalla wore the purple as co-ruler, a boy king shadowing Severus's campaigns. Gaul's wilds toughened him. The East's intrigues sharpened his gaze. Yet beneath the soldier's poise lurked fractures. His mother, Julia Domna, a Syrian noblewoman whose intellect outshone her station, poured Greek tragedies into his ears. Euripides' laments for fallen houses, Homer's epics of vengeful heroes. She dreamed of philosophers in her salon, but Caracalla hungered for Alexander's thunder, that Macedonian blaze who toppled kings at 20. Severus died in 211, fever claiming him in distant Eboracum, his last breath a plea: be harmonious, enrich the troops, scorn all else. Harmony shattered like brittle clay. Caracalla, 23 and seething, shared the throne with his younger brother Geta, a rivalry nursed since boyhood over toys turned to territories. Rome buzzed with their feud, Caracalla claiming the Latin West, Geta the Greek East, their mother shuttling between like a weary envoy. Julia Domna, her dark eyes hollowed by dread, begged unity in her apartments, lit by oil lamps flickering like failing hopes. It broke on a winter night in December 211. Caracalla lured Geta to their mother's chambers under pretense of truce, no guards allowed. The door barely clicked shut when centurions burst in. Blades drawn, Geta lunged for Julia's skirts, his plea a gasp: "Mother, he's killing me." as steel bit deep. Blood pooled on the mosaic floor, warm against her hem, staining the hem of empire itself. Caracalla, face twisted in triumph and terror, wiped his hands and proclaimed self-defense. By dawn, Rome awoke to purges. 20,000 names scratched from life, senators garroted in the forum, equestrians dragged from beds, even midwives who birthed Geta slain for their treason. Statues toppled, coins melted, inscriptions chiseled blank. Damnatio memoriae. They called it condemnation of memory. But ghosts don't vanish so easily. That blade in Geta's back carved deeper into Caracalla's soul. Paranoia bloomed like nightshade, every shadow a plot, every jest a dagger's edge. He shunned the Senate's honeyed lies, bedding down in camps with rough legionaries who cheered his donatives and drowned doubts in wine. Julia Domna, her grief a silent scream, became his shadow advisor, confessor, the one voice that pierced his armor, yet even she couldn't staunch the bleed. Caracalla's eyes, once bright with Alexander's fire, now darted like a cornered beast's. He toured the provinces not as unifier, but inquisitor. German tribes, cowed by fire and sword in 213, Dacians trembling under his boot in 214. Each victory fattened the ranks, but hollowed the man. Whispers followed. The emperor who slew kin would spare no one. And then, in the autumn of 215, the machine turned east. Caracalla's gaze fixed on Parthia, that eternal thorn, but first a pilgrimage. Alexandria called, Jewel of the Nile, cradle of knowledge where Alexander's bones lay enshrined. He sailed from Antioch, fleet slicing the wine-dark sea, heart pounding with a boy's awe. This wasn't conquest, this was communion. In the Soma, that gilded mausoleum, he would kneel before his idol's sarcophagus, swear oaths to outdo the conqueror's blaze. Julia Domna sailed beside, her presence a balm and a chain, urging restraint amid his mounting fever. But the empire's gears ground on. Edicts flew from his quill, expelling rural migrants from Alexandria's swollen streets, lest unrest ferment in the crowds. Papyri from the prefect's archives bear his seal-cold bureaucracy, masking the storm to come. Winter cloaked the delta in mist as the armada anchored, sails furled like fallen banners. Alexandria unfolded before them, a metropolis of 500,000 souls, its grid of colonnades gleaming under a low sun. The Canopic Way thrust straight as a spear from the harbor, lined with temples to Serapis and Isis, libraries spilling scrolls like autumn leaves. Philosophers debated in agoras, shaded by palms, scribes etched papyri by lamplight, fishermen hauled mullet from the Eunostos harbor, their nets heavy with silver scales. The air thrummed with life-spice merchants from India, haggling in guttural tongues, Judean weavers threading looms with wool-dyed Tyrian purple, Egyptian priests murmuring invocations to the ibis-headed Thoth. It was a crossroads of worlds, Greek fire tempered by Nile's silt, where Euclid's axioms mingled with Ptolemy's stars. Caracalla stepped ashore amid fanfare, purple cloak billowing, his praetorian escort a wall of iron. Crowds swelled the quays, curious and bold Alexandrians ever quick with wit, their satires sharper than any stylus. They had heard the tales from Rome, the brother-slayer, the purge that choked the Tiber red. Julia Domna walked at his side, her veils whispering against marble, eyes scanning the throng for threats unseen. The emperor's face, scarred from frontier brawls, cracked a rare smile as garlands rained down. He doled grain from imperial stores, coins stamped with his profile. Severus's stern brow softened in his son's image. For a breath, harmony reigned. Temples opened their inner sanctums. Feasts spilled wine like libations. Caracalla toured the Serapeum, that vast enclave of learning where scrolls chronicled empires lost, his fingers tracing hieroglyphs as if unlocking forgotten spells. But beneath the revels, resentment simmered. In tavernas shadowed by the heptastadian breakwater, young men gathered sons of scribes and scholars, their beards sparse with youth, tunics belted for the gymnasium sprint. They called themselves the philalethes, lovers of truth, heirs to the Mausion's legacy. Demetrius was one such, 20 summers etched in his lean frame, ink spots, flecking hands collused from papyrus rolls. Son of a priest to Serapis, he had memorized Plato's cave by firelight, dreamed of dialogues that pierced tyrants' veils. That eve, as lamps guttered in a back-alley taverna, ale loosening tongues. The jests flew unchecked. "Look at him, strutting like Zeus with a stutter," one quipped, aping Caracalla's limp from an old wound. Laughter rippled. Demetrius leaned in, eyes alight. He claims Alexander's mantle, yet slays his own blood. Geta's ghost haunts his dreams, brother murderer, they whisper in Rome. And his mother? Ah, Julia the Jocasta, clutching both sons in her lap. The name hung, a barb dipped in Oedipal venom. Whispers of incest had trailed Caracalla since the purge rumors born of Dio's chronicles, fed by Senate spite. The table erupted, verses improvised in iambic spite. Purple prince, kin's bane, seeks East's embrace, but finds only his mother's face. They drained their cups, oblivious to the ears in every shadow. Alexandria breathed mockery like sea foam. It was the city's salt, its soul. Word reached the palace by dawn, carried on a slave's trembling whisper. Caracalla, sleepless in chambers overlooking the lagoon, paced marble floors veined like lightning. Julia Domna, roused from fitful rest, found him rigid as a statue, fist clenched around a signet ring. They mock me, mother, me, who honors their founder. Her hand on his arm, gentle, as in boyhood, trembled. Sons forget slights in time, my Antoninus. Let philosophy temper the blade. But his eyes, fever bright, saw only betrayal. The machine whirred. Informers summoned, prefects questioned, the city's pulse mapped in ink. Demetrius and his fellows scattered to lectures and looms. Unaware the net tightened. Days blurred into a haze of piety. Caracalla processed to the Soma, that sacred vault where Alexander's mummy lay, wrapped in gold-threaded linen, face serene in eternal youth. He knelt, tears carving tracks through dust, vowing phalanxes reborn, Parthian crowns crushed beneath Roman heel. The city watched, enthralled until the edict dropped like thunder. All able-bodied youths, the criers bellowed from the steps of the Caesareum, were summoned to the Campus Martius outside the walls. A grand levy, they proclaimed. Enlist in the emperor's legions, honor the divine Alexander with ranks reformed in his image. Alexandria buzzed fathers, polished sons' sandals, mothers pressed amulets of Horus into palms. Demetrius, heart pounding with a philosopher's thrill, donned his best Keaton, scroll of the Phaedo tucked close. To serve truth through arms, he murmured, joining the throng snaking toward the gates. The field stretched wide under a merciless sun, dust devils dancing like omens. Thousands assembled bronze-skinned youths from the Delta's villages, olive-complected scholars from the Bruttian quarter, their chatter a nervous hum. Banners snapped in the breeze, emblazoned with the she-wolf and radiate soul. Caracalla appeared on horseback, purple cloak aflame against the haze. Julia Domna veiled in a litter nearby, her gaze averted. He rode the lines, voice booming praise. You, with the scholar's eye, front ranks for you. A touch on shoulders, a nod to the bold. Demetrius felt the emperor's stare linger, a chill amid the heat. The phalanx of Macedon lives anew, Caracalla thundered, united in valor, unbreakable as the Nile's flood. The signal was a trumpet's wail, sharp, unnatural. Legionaries melted from the flanks, shields locking into a steel noose. Confusion rippled, then screams as javelins flew. Demetrius spun, scroll falling, as a blade grazed his arm, hot, wet. "Traitors!" the centurions roared, though none had drawn steel. Boys bolted for the edges, trampling kin in blind panic, dust choking the air thick as smoke. Caracalla wheeled his mount, face a mask of grim justice, watching from a rise as the trap snapped shut. Julia's litter rocked. A muffled cry escaped her veils. "Antoninus, no!" But the wind swallowed it. The act blurred into horror's haze. Swords rose and fell, methodical as harvest sickles. Demetrius stumbled through the melee, blood slicking his sandals, the taste of copper on his tongue. A friend's head lolled, eyes vacant. Another's tunic shredded like papyrus in flame. Trenches yawned at the field's rim, dug by auxiliaries under dawn's cover graves disguised as latrines. Bodies tumbled in, some gasping, limbs twitching in the crush. The Nile's mouths ran crimson that day. Herodian would later scribe, staining the Delta's veins. Thousands fell not warriors, but weavers' sons, scribes' heirs, the city's sinew severed in a single stroke. By dusk, The field lay still, a vast sepulchre under heaped earth, flies droning their dirge. Word spread like fever through Alexandria's veins. The delegation of elders, summoned next morn to parley at the gates, met the same fate, throats slit before honeyed words could form. Then the plunder. Praetorians unleashed, a tide of iron crashing through quarters. Temples ransacked for gold, villas torched for sport, markets stripped to bone. Screams echoed from the Rakoti slums to the royal enclave, where silk-clad courtiers bartered lives for mercy. Julia Domna, confined to her pavilion, paced as reports trickled in her son's fury, a mirror to the blade that felled Geta. "This serves no empire," she whispered to a trembling scribe, but the machine rolled on, indifferent. Yet in the chaos, cracks showed. Not every blade thirsted equal. Some legionaries, sons of Greek soil themselves, faltered at the slaughter. Whispers of mutiny stirred in the ranks. Had not Severus warned of harmony? Caracalla, sensing the rot, doubled donatives, binding loyalty in silver chains. But the overreach lingered, a wound festering. Demetrius, fate's whim sparing him a spear's kiss, crawled from the charnel pit as dusk bled into night. His arm throbbed, vision swam, but he ran through olive groves silvered by moon, toward the lake's edge where fishing boats bobbed like forgotten prayers. A skiff bore him north, oars muffled, the city's glow fading to embers. This wasn't about one jest, one brother's blood. This was the system unmasked, an emperor's fragility weaponized by the state's vast levers. Informers as eyes, legions as fists, edicts as nooses. Caracalla didn't invent the machine, he oiled it with his own scars. Historians debate the toll Dio speaks of many thousands, Herodian of blood-soaked shores, but all agree. Alexandria's youth, its future scribes and senators, lay buried in hasty mounds. The purge echoed Rome's own, Geta's ghost multiplied in every grave. And in quieter corners, a parallel stirs. Modern tyrants, stung by satire's sting, unleashing algorithms and arrests on the mocking crowd. The machine endures, its gears greased by wounded pride. But shift the lens now, from emperor's blaze to the witness's flicker. Theodotus, a spice merchant from the Canopic bazaars, had watched the levy from his stall, scales idle in collused hands. Gray-bearded, thrice widowed, he peddled saffron from distant Cyrene, bartering tales as freely as weights. That morn, as youth streamed past Demetrius among them, flashing a grin and a borrowed coin for luck, Theodotus felt the air curdle. Rome's eagles circle too close, he muttered to a Judean neighbor, who nodded over prayer shawls folded neat. Theodotus knew the empire's breath. Severus's taxes had squeezed his ledgers dry, yet Caracalla's arrival promised trade's bloom imperial contracts, caravans swollen with legion pay. When the screams shattered the horizon, Theodotus bolted his stall, heart hammering like a forge. He wove through alleys, choked with fleeing families. The plunder's roar, building doors splintered, looms upended, children wailing as mothers clutched amulets of Bastet. A praetorian loomed at the quay's end, blade dripping, eyes wild with wine and warrant. Theodotus dove into a fishmonger's cart, scales and entrails his shield, breath ragged as the soldier passed. Night cloaked his escape to the marshes, where reeds whispered secrets to the wind. There, amid frogs' chorus and mosquito whine, he pieced the madness. Not rebellion quelled, but revenge distilled. Word from slaves in the palace spoke of Caracalla's rage at tavern verses, his vow to purge the wit from Greek tongues. Days bled into a siege of sorts. Caracalla cordoned quarters with checkpoints, walls rising like veins on a fevered brow. Bruchion walled from Racotis, scholars herded from markets. Incentives flowed to the faithful. Inform on a mocker, claim a villa's husk. The machinery hummed prefects, tallying heads, quartermasters hauling spoils to the fleet, yet cracks widened. Legionaries grumbled at the glut of recruits' ghosts. Egyptian auxiliaries, kin to the slain, melted into dunes. Julia Domna, her pleas ignored, turned inward, her body wasting as grief gnawed. Theodotus, hidden in a reed hut village, traded whispers for bread, tales of the emperor's knights, haunted by Alexander's shade, demanding phalanxes that marched only in dreams. Escalation crept like floodwaters. From Alexandria's corpse, Caracalla's gaze lifted east to Parthia, that silk-veiled foe. But the machine faltered here, gears slipping in blood's lubricant. Reports trickled. Unrest in the ranks, provincials bartering loyalty for scraps. Theodotus slipped back under cover of new moon, finding his stall ash, ledger's ash. In the Serapeum's shadow, he met survivors, maimed youths, widows, bartering bangles for grain. The emperor honors the dead conqueror, one spat, yet buries the living. A quiet irony bloomed amid the rubble. Caracalla's edict of 212, granting citizenship to all free souls, had swelled Alexandria's tax rolls now. Those same Romans lay in unmarked pits, their papers worthless as dust. Breathe here, amid the marsh's hush. Picture Theodotus by firelight, mending nets with trembling fingers, the delta stars, a indifferent vault. A child, his grandson, perhaps traces constellations in sand, oblivious to the empire's churn. Beauty persists, the ibis's cry at dawn, papyrus blooms nodding in breeze. Such contrasts ground the soul, remind that horror's peak demands a valley's peace. Yet forward pulls, what crack would finally shear the blade? Spring uncoiled like a serpent in 216, the air thick with jasmine and deceit. Caracalla, his coffers fattened by plunder, marched from Alexandria's gates, legions trailing like a wounded beast. Julia Domna rode in train, her litter's veils drawn tight, body frail as temple smoke. The road to Antioch wound through palm groves, dust devils veiling the scars. But the emperor's mind churned. Parthian envoys had spurned his overtures, Vologases v mocking the kinslayer's bride price for peace. Honor demanded reply, not diplomacy, but deluge. The climax crested at Arbela, that ancient crossroads where Alexander once shattered Persian pride. Caracalla feasted the Parthian deputation in a tented palace of silk and gold, toasts raised to eternal bonds, lutes plied eastern airs, slaves poured wine red as judgment. Artabanus IV, the king's brother, eyed the Roman warily, silks whispering against Roman wool. Caracalla, face flushed with vintage and vision, pledged alliance phalanxes joined, crowns entwined. The guests, lulled by revel and rhetoric, laid arms aside as custom bade. Slow now, the moment stretches taut as bowstring. Moon silvered the Tigris, reeds sighing like mourners. A trumpet's muted peal pierced the night signal veiled as signal. Legionaries surged from shadows, torches blooming like hellflowers. Artabanus staggered, goblet shattering, as blades found noble throats. The tent convulsed, silks rent, gold scattered, screams swallowed by the river's rush. Caracalla watched from a dais, cloak a shroud, Julia's absence a void in the fray. Not a wedding feast, but a slaughter pen. Hundreds felled, their blood the ink of his vow renewed. The crack came subtle, a hairline in marble. Parthian riders escaped the melee, horns wailing across the plains, rousing horsemen from slumber. Vologases v, no fool to Roman guile, mustered retaliatory fire raids on supply lines, scouts vanishing into dunes. Caracalla's machine, oiled by Alexandria's gore, seized in the heat. Desertions mounted, auxiliaries, kin to the east slain, whispered of curses. Back in Antioch, Julia Domna confronted her son in vaulted halls, voice a blade honed by grief. You honor phantoms, Antoninus, while the living revolt. He struck her, rumor or truth. And she retreated, flesh yielding to spirit's fire. Within months, her body failed, cancer's shadow claiming what purges spared. Her death in 217, ashes scattered in the Orontes, marked the emperor's hollow core. Caracalla pressed on, undimmed, toward Carrhae's site of Crassus's ancient folly, now temple to his redemption. But the overreach echoed. Legions murmured of the brother-killer's doom. On April 8, 217, amid scrub and stone, nature called. He dismounted, relieving himself by roadside scrub, back to the column's dust. Julius Martialis, a soldier spurned for promotion, approached dagger glinting in dawn's first ray. One thrust sufficed. The emperor crumpled, purple soiled in dirt. Macrinus, prefect of the guard, seized the reins, his plot woven in Antioch's whispers. The aftermath rippled swift. Macrinus, equestrian upstart, ruled 6 months before Elagabalus's son-priest revolt toppled him. Alexandria, rebuilt in Fitz walls, crumbled. Markets sprouted anew, but scars lingered. The youth's void echoed in empty lecture halls, phalanxes forever half-formed. Caracalla's citizenship edict, meant to bind the realm, swelled taxes but sowed resentment. His baths in Rome, vast as aqueducts, mocked the blood that funded them. Ironic twist. The emperor who erased Geta's name etched his own in infamy. His coins meant for unity melted in later mints. Centuries buried the gears, but discovery unearthed them. In 1899, papyri from Oxyrhynchus yielded P.Giss 40, a fragmentary edict from 215, Caracalla's hand expelling migrants, prelude to the storm. Wilhelm Schubart, German papyrologist, pieced it in Berlin's dim archives, his lenses fogging at the implications. Bureaucracy as blueprint for butchery. Later, in calm el-Shoqafa's catacombs stumbled upon by a donkey's fall, in 1900 bones piled in halls dubbed Caracallas, whispers of massacre victims fleeing to underworld depths. Italian excavator Alessandro Bagnani, sweat-streaked in 1,930 seconds digs, catalogued the shards, horse tack mingled with human femurs, a merchant's tale etched in refuse. Why does this echo now? In boardrooms and broadcasts, power's machine hums unchanged. A tweet's slight sparks, surveillance states, algorithms purge dissent like edicts of old. Caracalla teaches not villainy, but vigilance the peril when fragility dons the crown, turning jest to jihad. Resistance blooms in the margins. Theodotus's whispers, Demetrius's flight, the papyrus defying dust. They remind us, systems shatter not from swords alone, but from truths etched enduring. Return to that quay, the crimson sail long furled. The pharaoh stands yet, defiant against storms. Demetrius, gray now in some forgotten delta hut, unrolls his salvage scroll by lamplight, Plato's words a shield against night. The young men were meant to vanish erased like Geta's name, buried in empires in different earth. But they didn't. Their blood fed the Nile's bend, their tales seeped into Dio's ink, Herodian's verse. Archaeology pulls them forth, bone by bone, papyrus by scrap. And now they're here, with you because you chose to listen, to trace the machine's veins. If this fire stirs something in you, drop a comment below. What empire's ghost haunts your streets today? Your voice joins the chorus, defying the gears.